My name is Emma Carter. I'm 35 years old, and I own one of the fastest growing cybersecurity firms in North Carolina. Today, my company protects banks, hospitals, and government offices from hackers who steal millions of dollars every year. People call me successful. They see the awards on my office wall. They see the employees who greet me every morning. They see the articles written about the girl who built a technology company from nothing. What they don't see is the 15-year-old girl who slept on a cold park bench with a backpack under her head because her own parents threw her out. They don't see the father who looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're not my daughter anymore." Or the mother who watched me walk away without saying a single word. For 20 years, they never called. Never wrote, never asked if I was alive. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my receptionist buzzed my office. "Emma, there's an elderly couple here asking for you. Do they have an appointment?" "No." "Who are they?" She hesitated. "They say they're your parents." I froze. 20 years of silence, and suddenly, they remembered I existed. What they didn't know was that they weren't walking into the office of the little girl they abandoned. They were walking into the office of the woman whose signature could decide whether their family survived or lost everything. But before I tell you what happened that afternoon, you need to understand why my parents chose my brother over me. Because none of this started with money. It started with a lie. If stories about betrayal, second chances, and quiet revenge speak to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to the summer of 2006. I was 15 years old. We lived in a small town outside Greensboro, North Carolina. Population just under 3,000. One grocery store, one gas station, one church, and one family business. Carter Building Supply. My father, Richard Carter, owned it. He wasn't wealthy, but in our town, owning a business meant respect. People shook his hand, invited him to community dinners, asked for advice. He loved being important. More than anything, he loved appearances. Our house looked perfect from the outside. White fence, fresh flowers, American flag on the porch. Inside, everything revolved around one person. My younger brother, Jason. He was 13, the golden child. If Jason broke something, it was an accident. If I broke something, it was irresponsibility. If Jason got a B, Dad blamed the teacher. If I got a B, Dad asked why it wasn't an A. I learned early that our family didn't have two children. It had one son and one inconvenience. Mom rarely argued. She cooked, cleaned, smiled for church photos, and stayed quiet whenever Dad decided someone deserved punishment. Looking back, I don't think she was cruel. I think she'd simply forgotten how to stand up. The only person who ever treated me like I mattered was my grandfather. Dad's father, Henry Carter. Grandpa Henry repaired old clocks in a tiny workshop behind his house. He used to let me sit beside him every Saturday. "Machines tell the truth?" he'd say. "People don't always." He taught me how gears worked, how tiny pieces connected to create something bigger. One afternoon he gave me an old computer someone had thrown away. "It doesn't work," he said, "but maybe you can figure out why." That broken computer changed my life. I spent months taking it apart, reading library books, watching free tutorials at school. Eventually, I fixed it. I still remember Grandpa smiling. "You've got a gift, Emmy." And no one had ever called my talent a gift before. Only Grandpa. When he died from a heart attack 2 years later, I lost the only person who believed in me. Dad inherited his workshop, sold every tool inside it, then turned it into storage. By 15, I'd become the unofficial computer repair person at school. Teachers asked for help. Neighbors brought me old laptops. I never charged anyone. I just liked solving problems. Jason liked different things. Sneaking out, showing off, buying expensive sneakers he couldn't afford. Dad always gave him money. "He's a boy," Dad would say. "Boys need confidence." I needed school supplies. Jason needed confidence. Guess which one Dad thought mattered more? Everything changed on a Thursday afternoon. I came home from school carrying my science project. Dad's truck was already in the driveway. That was unusual, he never came home before 6. The front door was open. Inside. Everyone was waiting. Dad, Mom, Jason, even our bookkeeper Mr. Collins. No one spoke. Dad slammed a folder onto the dining table. "Where's the money?" I blinked. "What money?" "The cash from the business." "I don't know what you're talking about." His jaw tightened. $28,000 disappeared. I stared at him. $28,000. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. "The accounting records show someone transferred money from the business account." Dad pointed at a printed document. "Using the office computer." "So? You were there Saturday?" "I was fixing your printer?" "Exactly." I looked at Jason. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Dad shoved another paper toward me. "Tell me the password." "What password?" "The account you used." "I don't have an account?" "You expect me to believe that?" "I didn't take anything." Dad's face turned red. "Liar." I tried explaining. I had never even logged into the business bank account. I didn't know the password. I didn't know anything about banking, but Dad had already decided. Jason suddenly spoke. "I saw her using the office computer." I turned toward him. "What? You told me not to tell." My stomach dropped. He was lying. Completely lying. Dad looked at me with absolute certainty. "There it is." Mom whispered softly. "Emma, if you just tell the truth." "I am telling the truth." Jason lowered his head. Perfect performance. Perfect timing. I finally understood. Someone had stolen the money, and Jason knew exactly who. Because it was him. Dad grabbed my backpack from beside the stairs. He threw it at my feet. "Pack what you need." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. "What?" "You heard me. Dade. You stole from your own family." "I didn't." He stepped closer. "So now you're calling your brother a liar?" "Yes." The room went silent. Jason began fake crying. Mom wrapped an arm around him. That image stayed with me forever. The guilty child being comforted. The innocent child being erased. Dad opened the front door. "You've got 10 minutes. "I'm 15. "You should have thought about that before stealing from me." "I have nowhere to go." "That's no longer my problem." I looked at Mom. She was crying. But she never moved. Never said, "Stop." Never stood between us. She simply looked down at the floor. That hurt even more than Dad's words. I packed one backpack. 3 shirts. 2 pairs of jeans. A toothbrush. Grandpa's old screwdriver. And the broken wristwatch he'd repaired before he died. That was everything I owned. As I reached the front door, I stopped. I turned back one last time. "I didn't do this." Dad folded his arms. "Goodbye, Emma. Not, I'll miss you. Not, I hope you're safe. Just, goodbye." The door slammed behind me. The porch light switched off. And just like that, I stopped being their daughter. I walked until sunset. Then after sunset. Then through the night. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't go back. Around midnight, rain started falling. I sat beneath a bus stop shelter hugging my backpack. Cold. Hungry. Terrified. I kept thinking, surely Mom will come. Surely she'll realize Dad made a mistake. Every pair of headlights made me stand. Every passing car made my heart race. None of them stopped. No one came. By sunrise, I finally accepted something no 15-year-old should ever have to accept. I was completely alone. That afternoon, fate introduced me to the person who changed everything. His name was Walter Brooks. He was 68 years old. Retired. The head janitor from my high school. Most students barely noticed him. I did. He always smiled. Always asked how school was going. He found me asleep on a bench outside the public library. He didn't wake me immediately. Instead, he quietly placed a paper bag beside me. When I opened my eyes, there was a sandwich, a bottle of water, and an apple. He sat on the other end of the bench. "You look like you've had a rough night?" I nodded. He didn't ask questions. Didn't judge. Didn't pry. After a few minutes, he simply said, "I've got a spare room." I looked at him carefully. He smiled. "You don't have to answer now." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "What do you know?" "I know hungry kids shouldn't sleep outside." I felt tears burning behind my eyes. Those were the kindest words anyone had spoken to me in years. I followed him home. It was a tiny brick house. Nothing fancy. Everything spotless. His late wife's photographs covered the walls. She'd passed away 5 years earlier. There were no children. No grandchildren. Just silence. Walter showed me a small bedroom. "The sheets are clean." He handed me a towel. "Bathrooms down the hall." "When do you want me to leave?" He looked genuinely confused. "When you've finished becoming whoever you're supposed to become." That sentence became the foundation of my life. Over the next few weeks, Walter never asked for rent. Never demanded explanations. He only had 3 rules. Stay in school, tell the truth, help around the house. I followed all 3. During the day, I attended classes. After school, I repaired computers at a local electronics shop. At night, Walter and I ate dinner together while watching old Western movies. Little by little, the fear inside me faded. For the first time in years, home felt peaceful. But I still couldn't stop thinking about one question. If I hadn't stolen the money, who had? And why had Jason lied? I didn't know it yet. But the answer would stay buried for 20 years. Until the day my parents walked into my office, begging for help. For years, I tried to convince myself that what happened wasn't personal. Maybe Dad had simply believed the evidence. Maybe Mom had been too afraid to stop him. Maybe Jason was just a scared 13-year-old who got caught in something bigger than himself. Those lies helped me sleep. The truth would have kept me awake. Walter never pushed me to forgive anyone. One evening, while we were repairing an old desktop computer in his garage, he looked at me and asked, "Do you know why people lie, Emma?" I shrugged. "To stay out of trouble." He smiled. "Sometimes." He tightened a loose screw before continuing. "But the biggest lies aren't told to fool other people. They're told to protect the liar from seeing themselves." I thought about that sentence for years. At 15, I didn't understand it. At 35, I finally did. I graduated high school with honors. The guidance counselor helped me apply for scholarships. Walter insisted on driving me to every interview. His old blue pickup barely reached highway speed. Every time it rattled over 55 miles an hour, he'd pat the dashboard and say, "Easy, girl, we've still got places to go." The truck sounded like it was about to fall apart. It never did. Kind of like Walter. College wasn't glamorous. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons repairing computers, evenings attending classes. Most nights, I studied until 2 in the morning. Sometimes I slept only 3 hours. But every semester, I moved one step closer to the future my father had said I didn't deserve. By 24, I'd earned my degree in cybersecurity. Most people didn't even know what cybersecurity meant back then. Companies only called after something terrible happened. A hacked database, a stolen payroll, a ransomware attack. I became very good at solving problems nobody else understood. Eventually, I started my own consulting company. One client became 5, 5 became 20, 20 became hundreds. Within 10 years, Carter Cyber Defense employed 63 people. We occupied 3 floors of a glass office building in downtown Greensboro. Ironically, my last name was still Carter, the same name my father had tried to erase. Walter refused to retire from helping people. Every Wednesday, he volunteered at the community center teaching kids how to repair bicycles. One afternoon I asked him, "Why do you still do all this?" He smiled. "Because somebody once helped me." "Ooh. My 8th grade teacher. What did she do?" "She believed me. I waited. That's all." He nodded. "Sometimes believing someone is the most expensive gift you'll ever give." Years passed. Birthdays came and went. Christmases too. Not once did my parents call. Not once did Jason apologize. Eventually, their silence became normal. Then, everything changed because of a newspaper article. One Monday morning, my assistant placed a local business journal on my desk. "Congratulations." "For what?" She pointed at the cover. There I was, smiling awkwardly beside our company logo. Headline: Local entrepreneur wedens te cybr secureva WRD. The article talked about my company, our community work, scholarships, free security training for nonprofits. I didn't think much about it. Until 3 weeks later, my receptionist buzzed my office. "Emma." "Yes." "There's a man here asking for you." "Client?" "No." "Ooh, he says he's your brother." Every muscle in my body froze. Jason. After 20 years. He looked older than 33. Much older. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Dark circles under his eyes. His beard hadn't been trimmed properly. He smiled as if we'd spoken yesterday. "Hey sis." I didn't stand. "What do you want?" He laughed nervously. "Straight to business. You lost the right to small talk 20 years ago." His smile faded. "I deserve that." Silence. Finally he spoke. "I've made mistakes. I folded my hands. So have prisons." He ignored that. "Dad's been sick." I waited. "Mom worries about you." "No. She doesn't." "They both miss you." "No, Jason." I looked directly into his eyes. "They miss what they think I can do for them." His face changed, only for a second. But I saw it. Walter had been right. People tell lies to protect themselves. Jason still couldn't hide them. "I need your help." There it was. Finally. The truth. "What kind of help?" "My construction company." He stopped. "Is having financial problems." "What kinda?" "Temporary." "How temporary?" He swallowed. "We owe some people money." "How much?" He looked down. "About $800,000. I almost laughed. 800,000. Jason couldn't even say the number while looking me in the eye. "I don't lend money. I'm not asking for a loan." I was hoping. He hesitated. "Maybe you could invest." "In your company?" "Yeah." I leaned back. "What does your company do?" "Commercial construction." "Annual revenue?" "Profit margin?" "I don't know exactly." "Current debt?" Silence. "Pending lawsuits?" More silence. I smiled politely. "You don't know your own business, Jason." He rubbed his forehead. "It's complicated." "No," I said quietly. "It's bankrupt." He looked like a little boy again. Only this time, Dad wasn't there to rescue him. "I've got employees depending on me." I had nowhere to sleep at 15. His shoulders dropped. "I know." "No." I shook my head. "You remember?" "Knowing requires understanding." He stood to leave. Halfway to the door, he turned around. "Dad really is sick. I hope he gets better." "You don't care." "I care about sick people." I paused. "I just don't mistake consequences for tragedy." Jason left without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I'd seen my brother. Because something felt wrong. Very wrong. $800,000. Construction companies didn't collapse overnight. There had to be more. The next morning, I asked my legal department to perform a routine background check. Not because he was family. Because he had asked me to invest. What they found shocked me. Jason's company wasn't just in debt. It was under investigation. Federal investigators suspected someone had altered financial records on multiple government building contracts. Millions of dollars were unaccounted for. No charges had been filed yet. But they were coming. My brother wasn't drowning because of bad luck. He was drowning because someone had been stealing. The irony almost made me laugh. 20 years earlier, someone had stolen money, and I'd been blamed. Now, history was repeating itself. 3 days later, another visitor arrived. This time it was my mother. She looked smaller. Her hair had turned completely gray. The confident woman I remembered had disappeared. She stood in my office doorway holding a homemade apple pie. My favorite. Or what used to be my favorite. Sweetheart, a sweetheart. The word sounded unfamiliar coming from her. "You can sit." She sat carefully, placed the pie on my desk. "I made this." I nodded. "Thank you." Silence. Long, painful silence. Finally she whispered, "I've wanted to see you for years." I looked at her calmly. "Numb?" She blinked. "You've wanted to feel better for years." Tears filled her eyes. "Emma, you knew where I lived." She looked away. "You knew where I went to college." More silence. "You knew where I worked." She started crying. "I was afraid." "Off what?" "Your father." I closed my notebook. "You were 40 years old." She nodded slowly. "I know, no," I said softly. "You remember." Knowing would have changed something. She stared at the floor. Then quietly asked, "Did you really not take the money?" I couldn't believe what I'd heard. 20 years. 20 years, and she was still asking. "You still don't know?" She covered her face. "I always wondered." Wondered. Not believed. Wondered. That single word ended every chance we might have had. I stood and walked toward the window. Downtown Greensboro stretched beneath us. Busy streets. Moving traffic. People building ordinary lives. My mother should have known. She whispered behind me. I was weak. I nodded. "You were?" "I can't change it." "No." I turned around. "You can't." She cried harder. "I've regretted it every day." I believed her. Regret was real. But regret wasn't repair. She wiped her eyes. "Your father wants to see you?" "Why?" "He needs you." There it was again. Need, not love. Need? What does he need? She hesitated. Then finally admitted it. "The bank is taking the house." I wasn't surprised. "The business closed." I already knew. "Jason needs help." Of course he did. Everything always came back to Jason. Before leaving, Mom reached into her purse. She pulled out an old photograph. Me, age 14. Standing beside Grandpa Henry in his workshop. She slid it across the desk. "I kept this hidden." I stared at it. Grandpa's hand rested proudly on my shoulder. I smiled in the picture. A smile I'd forgotten I ever had. Mom whispered, "Hey always believed in you." So did Walter. She looked confused. "Who's Walter?" "The man who became my family after yours threw me away." She lowered her head. For the first time, I think she truly understood. Blood creates relatives. Love creates family. After she left, my chief legal officer knocked on my office door. "Emma, come in." He handed me a thick folder. "Interesting coincidence." "What?" "Our firm just received an invitation to bid on a forensic cybersecurity audit." "Who from?" He named the company. I felt my heartbeat stop. It was the accounting firm investigating Jason's construction business. If we accepted, my company would be responsible for uncovering whoever had manipulated millions of dollars in financial records. I slowly closed the folder. 20 years ago, my family destroyed my life over stolen money. Now, fate had placed me in charge of investigating the biggest theft my brother had ever been connected to. I looked out the window again. Some people call that revenge. Walter would have called it something else. The truth, finally finding its way home. I accepted the contract. Not because Jason was my brother. Not because I wanted revenge. Because my company had earned the bid fairly. For 20 years I'd built my business around one rule. Never let personal feelings decide professional ethics. If I broke that rule now, I'd become exactly the kind of person my father always believed I was. So I signed the contract. Within a week, my team began examining thousands of financial records from Jason's construction company. Invoices, payroll reports, vendor payments, bank transfers. It was routine work, until one of my senior analysts knocked on my office door. "Emma, you need to see this." He projected a timeline onto the conference room screen. "There are dozens of altered invoices. Who approved them? They all trace back to one executive login. Jason." He nodded. "But that's not the strange part." "What is?" "The fraud started almost 20 years ago." I frowned. "How?" "The first suspicious transactions appear in another company." He enlarged the screen. I stared at the company name. Carter Building Supply. My father's old business. The room suddenly felt very quiet. My analyst continued. "When Jason was 13, someone created fake supplier accounts. They stayed active for years. Small amounts at first. 500 yuan, 700 yuan, 900 it, no one noticed. But over time, they became hundreds of thousands. I couldn't breathe. 20 years. 20 years I'd carried the label of thief. And the real thief had been sitting across the dinner table all along. I closed my eyes. Suddenly I remembered something. The day Dad accused me, Jason had been unusually calm. Too calm. He'd known exactly where to point the blame. He hadn't invented the lie that afternoon. He'd prepared it. The investigation continued. Every document pointed to the same conclusion. Jason had started stealing as a teenager. No one caught him. Because every time something looked suspicious, someone else became the problem. Eventually, he believed he was untouchable. A month later, Greensboro hosted its annual Chamber of Commerce Business Excellence Awards. Our company had been nominated for Community Business of the Year. Hundreds of local business owners attended. Banks, law firms, doctors, city officials, news reporters. I almost skipped the event. But Walter smiled. You've spent your whole life hiding from rooms your father controlled. He adjusted his tie. This room belongs to you. Walter sat beside me during dinner. He was 78 now. His hands shook slightly. His hair was completely white, but his smile hadn't changed. Halfway through the meal, he leaned toward me. Proud of you. For what? You built everything without becoming angry. I laughed softly. I've been angry. New. He smiled. You've been hurt. There's a difference. The award ceremony began. When our company won, I walked onto the stage. The audience applauded. Camera flashes lit the room. I thanked my employees, my clients, Walter, the community. Then I stepped away from the microphone. That's when I saw them, standing near the ballroom entrance. Mom, Dad, Jason. I hadn't invited them, someone else had, probably hoping for a happy family reunion. Dad looked older, much older. His shoulders had collapsed inward. The confident businessman was gone. Jason avoided eye contact. Mom clutched her purse with both hands. When the ceremony ended, they approached me. Dad spoke first. Congratulations. Thank you. Long silence. Then, I owe you an apology. Those words surprised me. Not because I wanted them. Because I'd stopped expecting them years ago. Dad swallowed hard. I was wrong. I waited. I shouldn't have thrown you out. Another pause. I shouldn't have believed. His voice cracked. Jason. Mom began crying. Jason stared at the carpet. For the first time in my life, my father looked small. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a worn envelope. I found this after closing the business. Inside was a faded notebook page. Jason's handwriting, age 13. Columns of numbers. Practice bank passwords. Fake account names. Amounts of money, Dad whispered. I found dozens of pages. I never knew. I believed him. Not because he deserved it. Because grief had finally stripped away his pride. Jason finally spoke. I did it. No excuses. No lies. I stole the money. I blamed you. I kept stealing because nobody questioned me. He looked directly at me. I ruined your life. I nodded. You did. He cried. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, I answered honestly. Because forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something another person chooses. Dad suddenly dropped to one knee. Right there in the hotel ballroom. People nearby stopped talking. He looked up at me. I failed you. I failed as your father. I can't undo 20 years. But if there's anything left, anything, please, help your brother. There it was. Even now, his apology ended with Jason. Some habits never die. I helped him stand. People probably expected me to hug him. Instead, I looked him in the eye. Dade, why already helped your family? He looked confused. My company accepted the investigation. We reported every piece of evidence exactly as the law required. I didn't protect Jason. I didn't destroy him. I simply told the truth. Dad closed his eyes. He understood. Justice wasn't revenge. Justice was accountability. Federal investigators announced criminal charges against Jason 3 weeks later. News spread quickly. Some people blamed me. Others praised me. Neither opinion mattered. The evidence spoke louder than either side. Jason eventually accepted a plea agreement. He apologized publicly. Not because a lawyer told him to. Because for the first time, he'd stopped lying to himself. My parents lost the house. They moved into a small apartment across town. Mom found work at a community thrift store. Dad volunteered repairing wheelchairs for veterans. Life humbled both of them. Sometimes. That's the only teacher pride will ever listen to. One Sunday afternoon, Mom asked if she could visit Walter. I wasn't sure. But Walter smiled. Everyone deserves one honest conversation. She came carrying cookies. She apologized to him. For what? Walter asked. For saving my daughter when I didn't. Walter looked at her kindly. I didn't save Emma. She frowned. She saved herself. I just left the light on. Mom cried harder than I'd ever seen. A year later, Walter became ill. His heart was failing. The doctors warned us there wasn't much time. I moved into his house. Just like he'd once opened it for me. Every morning I made his coffee. Every evening we watched old Western movies. One afternoon, he handed me a small wooden box. Inside was Grandpa Henry's old screwdriver, the one I'd packed into my backpack at 15. I kept it polished. Walter smiled. You'll probably need it someday. For what? Fixing broken things. I laughed through tears. Some things can't be fixed. He nodded. I know. But people can still be loved. Walter passed away quietly one October morning. At his funeral, more than 300 people attended. Former students, neighbors, teachers, veterans, families he'd quietly helped for decades. My parents came too. They stood in the very back. They didn't approach me. They simply listened. During my eulogy I said, the man who raised me shared no blood with me. He never adopted me. He never asked me to call him dad. He simply showed up. And sometimes, showing up is the purest form of love. I noticed my father quietly wiping away tears. Months later, I visited Walter's house one last time before donating it according to his wishes. On his workbench sat an old handwritten note. It's simply ready. Leave people better than you found them. I folded it carefully into my wallet. I still carry it today. People often ask me if I ever forgave my parents. The answer isn't simple. I stopped carrying hatred. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. My parents are part of my life now. Carefully, slowly, one conversation at a time. Trust isn't rebuilt with apologies. It's rebuilt with years. Just like it was destroyed. Sometimes I drive past the old family house. Another family lives there now. Children ride bicycles in the driveway. Water spills out the front door. It no longer feels like my home. Because home was never that house. Home was a tiny spare bedroom where an old janitor told a frightened 15-year-old girl, stay until you've become whoever you're supposed to become. He never knew it. But those words gave me a future. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The people who abandon you don't decide how your story ends. The people who believe in you do. The greatest revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. It's becoming the person you were always meant to be. Even after they stopped believing you could. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. Sometimes, the deepest wounds don't come from strangers. They come from the people who were supposed to protect us. But this story reminds us that our past does not have to define our future. The family we are born into may shape our beginning, but the family we choose, the people who stand beside us when everything falls apart, are the ones who truly matter. Emma didn't win because she got revenge. She won because she refused to become bitter. She built a life filled with integrity, hard work, and compassion, proving that success is the strongest answer to betrayal. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments. Ask, what would you have done if you were in Emma's place? Would you have forgiven your parents? Or walked away forever? If you enjoyed this emotional family revenge story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the thus notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that your worth is never determined by the people who fail to see it. Until next time, remember. The greatest revenge isn't making those who hurt you suffer, it's building a life so meaningful that their rejection no longer has the power to define you. Thanks for watching, stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next story.